Well, we've got some big news from Capitol Hill. Last night, the House passed President Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy's $4 trillion expansion of the debt ceiling, clearing the chamber in a bipartisan 314 to 117 vote. The bill will head to the Senate next, where leadership is hoping to push it through to a floor vote before the country is expected to default on June 5th. Now, the path to 51 votes, however, won't be an easy one because some senators are already voicing their opposition. Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, says he will force a vote on an amendment that would cut federal spending by 5% in each of the next 2 years by reducing various programs. And then some people wonder what those should be. But Senator Paul is here with us right now to discuss his plan and how he feels about the current debt agreement. Thank you so much for coming back to Rising, Senator.
Glad to be with you.
So what do you think of the deal that was reached, and what do you hope to vote on that would be different?
Well, I don't think there's anything conservative about the Biden-McCarthy plan. To add unlimited spending or unlimited borrowing for the next 2 years, go all the way through the next election, basically is an abdication of any kind of responsibility, any kind of fiscal responsibility. There'll be no discussion over any kind of restraint in spending after we allow the borrowing to go up for 2 years. You're right that some people have estimated it will be as much as $4 trillion in new debt. So for someone to say, oh, well, this is the conservative, this is historic conservative deal that adds $4 trillion in debt over 2 years, that's nonsense. And so I don't think anybody really believes that. And the vast majority of the American people would like something more. I know people in my state, we still believe in a balanced budget. We thought that's what conservatives were for. And the constitutional amendment that we have voted on in the past actually requires a balance in 5 years. So I've always taken 5 years as sort of the believable window of time in which you should try to balance the budget. Anything that's 10 years or longer becomes less believable because you don't know what people will do 5 or 10 years from now and whether they'll adhere to what you've asked them to do. So what I've done is put forward the spending caps necessary to balance in 5 years. And then we also do allow the debt ceiling to go up because it takes 5 years to balance. There'll still be some more accumulation of debt, but we only let the debt go up $500 billion. Now that used to be a lot of money, even in Washington, but $500 billion anymore lasts 6 months. Who knows? It goes pretty quickly. But what that would do is at the end of 6 months, we'd be forced to go through this again. Some people say, oh, this is a terrible thing to go through for the country. I think the opposite. I think this discussion over the lack of money, the $1 trillion annual deficits, and the mismatch between revenue and spending is something we should be discussing all of the time. So if we were forced to come back here in 6 months and have the same discussion, I think it would be the best thing we could possibly do for the country. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll have the votes. No Democrat will vote to cut spending if it's a real cut in spending like mine. And of the Republicans, only about half of them. This is kind of what you saw in the House as well. About a third of the Republicans were conservative enough to say this is a crazy, no good deal and it won't help balance the budget. But 2/3 of Republicans went along with it. And, you know, we'll be about a half to 2/3 here who'll go along with this as well.
If Congress voted to decide we got to cut spending by 5%, you know, in the next 2 years, everything is on the table. The problem, it seems to me, is that, as you point out, Democrats don't really fundamentally want to cut spending at all. Republicans may say when they have no power that they want to cut spending, and then when they actually have the opportunity to do it, they'll say, well, Medicare, Social Security are off the table, and then also the military is off the table, and then it's like, well, what's left? There's no way we can significantly cut spending if everybody's sacred cows are not going to be dealt with.
You're exactly right. So when you look at the budget, 2/3 of spending is mandatory. This is Medicare, food stamps, a lot of different welfare programs, but they're never looked at. And so 2/3 of the budget, if that's off the table, now we're saying, oh, we're going to balance the budget by only looking at a third. The problem is of the remaining third, half of that, so 1/6 of the budget is military. They took that off the table. But it's worse than that. So mandatory spending, 2/3 is going to go up by 5%. The military is going to go up by 3%. The remaining 1/6 of the government, about 16 to 17% of government, is what they looked at. So when Biden and McCarthy sat down to negotiate, they weren't negotiating over all the spending. They were negotiating over sort of toying with 16%. Well, you can eliminate the 16% and you don't come to balance. You have to look at numbers of the whole entire budget or you never get to balance. And this is why we've got such a real problem in our country. But I think if you talk to most Americans out there that are actually out there working, most of them think government ought to be reduced dramatically in size and it should balance its budget.
The conservatives were happy to get the reduction in IRS funding, given the weaponization of the federal government, concerns that would be used to really go after a really, working class Americans, people with, who have confused, all of us who have confusing income sources. Maybe you're working Uber, maybe you're working multiple jobs. The IRS would really go after you for that. So that seemed like a win. Then there was the work requirements on SNAP, although I saw some analysis suggesting that actually doing that, it's going to make the program, more people will be eligible for it, and it doesn't actually help control spending at all. It seemed to me like a perfect metaphor for a lot of conservative priorities where you end up shooting yourselves in the foot.
Yeah, in Washington, it's a tricky situation. You got to really look at the details. Even the titles of bills are typically the opposite of what they are. So Biden had an Inflation Reduction Act that caused inflation, greatly exacerbated inflation. This one's called the Fiscally Responsible Act. It's fiscally irresponsible. On the IRS agents, well, there was an $80 billion increase, and they've pared it back, I think, $1.2 billion. But that $1.2 billion may well be spent somewhere else because they hate to ever save any money. And I'm not so sure we really changed the trajectory of what's going to happen with the IRS. On the work requirements, sure, they expanded the work requirements by going up to age 54 from 49. But they took some other people off, and the Democrats are laughing and rubbing their hands together that the actual numbers of people on, required for work or on these programs actually is going to go up now. So actually, the CBO scored this as an increase in cost. So everything they've sort of told us about this bill turned out not to be true. They say, oh, well, there's this great 1% trigger that if Congress doesn't pass the appropriation bills, there'll be a 1% cut in the discretionary spending. Well, one, that's not a very big chunk of the government. It's about a third. But two, they can still cobble all the bills together and pass what's called an omnibus. These omnibuses are these 3,000-page bills that nobody reads. That's in all likelihood what still happens. You think they're going to, all these people that want to explode the military spending are going to not pass something and get a 1% cut? No, it's pretty easy to do an omnibus. The omnibus is basically just, patching it all together in one enormous bill, and they pass it, at midnight on December 24th, So I suspect that's what will happen again. And I don't suspect anything good comes from this debt deal. And I think in 2 years, when the debt has increased another $4 trillion, people are going to say, oh my goodness, how could anybody have supported this deal?
And we'll have more with Senator Rand Paul in just a minute.